All right, DC toy fans, welcome back to another edition of the DCU Classics Director's Commentary as we go wave by wave through the DC Universe Classics 6-inch line from Mattel. And today we are talking about Wave 5, the one you see here, because that comes after Wave 4. Well, actually, it comes after those 2-packs I did, right? That was last time? All right, so we didn't do a wave last time. But Metallo's in this one, and he was awesome. He was a giant robot. Everyone loves giant robots, right? The Horsemen definitely love giant robots. They really enjoyed sculpting him. I remember them letting us know he was truly a cool figure to sculpt. Comparatively, the rest of the figures didn't have that many newly tooled parts, and there is a reason for that. So this wave was the notorious Walmart wave, meaning it was only available at Walmart. And much like the Toys R Us 2-packs I talked about last time, and the KB items from Wave 4, this is kind of the cost of doing business. When you want to have a toy line at a major retailer, you have to give them something customized or exclusive. But the problem is most exclusives come with a very, very tight budget. So you have to be creative. And with Walmart having to do an entire wave of figures for them as part of their customized program, meant we had to figure out a way to do this basically with new heads only, or at least very minimal new parts. Well, not those heads, more these kind of heads, DC heads. Now we could have done repaints, but obviously we didn't want to just do repaints. We wanted to at least make these original characters. So this meant we had to, really think about who was the best characters and what was the best way to do this. So originally, you can see in the year B sheet, Wave 5 was supposed to be the Shazam, Black Superman, Mr. Miracle wave with Calabac. But with the request from Walmart, that wave moved out and became Wave 6. And we slotted in a new Wave 5, which is the one that we're talking about today with the new heads. And even originally, this rollout was going to be slightly different. It was going to have Major Force as the 5th character. But then that got changed to Amazo, and we tried to get Major Force. We actually did him in the Public Enemies wave. And I remember we kept trying to get him in the regular wave, and it just never happened. But it did wind up including figures like Ray Palmer, the Atom, which was actually kind of, for DC, that's actually pretty much an A-list character, or at least maybe a B-plus character as far as the fan base is concerned. And he's still one of my favorite figures we did, actually. I don't know, I really love shrinking characters. Like the Ant-Man movie, too. Then we had Black Lightning. Again, a character that we were able to do with one head. And I also should mention that all of these characters we chose for this wave, even though they were going to be heads only, we tried to deliberately pick figures that we could do different versions down the line. Meaning this was not going to be like the one and only chance to get this character. So a great example is the Riddler. We'll get when I get into the details about him in a moment, but this was not going to be sort of the only time we would do the Riddler if we were going to do a head only, so that way at least people could get that character down the line in a slightly different way and maybe with more tooling than this customized wave. Next up we had the Eradicator, which was our required Superman and or Batman per wave, so this was a good way to get Superman in. And then Amazo, in his kind of classic looks with the green pants that go up to his belly button, etc., etc. And I think we were able to even use the Green Lantern ring from Hal Jordan from Wave 3. And then, as mentioned in the beginning, Metallo, the giant robot powered by kryptonite, which was so much fun to sculpt and even collect and play with. And he had a removable chest plate, but we'll get into that with the details. All right, so let's go figure by figure and kind of talk about these guys. All right, so first up, Ray Palmer, the Atom. So he was, I think, probably almost the least amount of tooling of almost any figure in this line with a head, but we were also able to give him a really cool accessory, which was a mini Ray Palmer. So you kind of got two figures in one, right? And yeah, bright colors, blue, red, looks patriotic. Not that, he's an all-American character, but Walmart tends to like red, white, and blue characters a lot. And this wasn't the only time to do the Atom. Again, we were able to do other versions of him down the road, and this was very deliberate, again, in choosing characters that we knew we could only really afford to tool a head and maybe one accessory. So we wanted to be able to revisit these characters down the road in DCU Classics and do other versions, do modern versions, do classic versions, et cetera, so that, if you weren't able to get this Walmart wave, if you didn't live close to a Walmart, weren't able to access a Walmart, you could still get the character down the line. I know, it was not a perfect solution, but it is what it was. Riddler was next, and we purposely did the suit version of Riddler here because we wanted to break up really the silhouettes of the characters. We had all the other characters with a muscular body, and Riddler was able to use the suit body, which, as I talk about in my Buck video, I was amazed at how often the suit body gets used. Way more than you would think it gets used for a superhero line. And much like the Atom, Riddler was a character we could revisit. So we could do the skin-tight suit version down the line, which we did. And that, helped us keep Riddler out there and make this version of Riddler stand out with the suit. And of course, there was my absolute favorite version of Riddler that we did in the Superpowers line at the very tail end, which was the version released in Brazil back in the 80s, which was a repaint of Hal Jordan, complete with ring on finger. I have this one on my wall in my office. I love it. It's just so cool. All right, Reign of the Superman, the inspiration for the Eradicator figure. So I actually have a very special attachment to the storyline. Reign of the Superman was my personal introduction to DC Comics. When I was at summer camp as a kid, this storyline was out, following up on the death of Superman and Funeral for a Friend, and our counselors, whenever they'd go on their day off, would bring the new issues, and we would read them ravenously, and that was kind of my introduction. So I definitely have a very, very strong connection to the Reign of Superman, and getting to Eradicator was really cool. Sometimes, like here, he is done with his goggles so you could see his eyes through his goggles. And other times he is drawn kind of, I guess, the opposite way, where the glasses are sort of metallic and shiny or just solid yellow and you can't see his eyes. So we knew we were going to have an issue with this because we couldn't afford to do a clear piece of plastic. We had to do everything in the same tool. If you use clear plastic, you have to run the tool again, a second time with clear plastic, which is why you see all clear plastic figures or all solid. And yes, occasionally you will see figures that are, all solid that do have some clear parts, but that's usually when you have more time, more budget. We were able to do that on Booster Gold with his goggles. I regret that we couldn't do it with Eradicator, but it was just kind of, again, this wave was done not just inexpensively, but it was done very quickly. So we just did not have time to run the tool a second time and get the goggles clear. And that's why he doesn't have clear goggles. All right, next up, we have Black Lightning. And same thing, he was ahead. He was easy to do. He didn't have many new parts. We didn't even need to do a new belt or new gloves. He could use all of the standard sort of Buck gloves. And kind of, I know I'm being repetitive in this one, but same thing. We knew he was a character we could revisit and do other versions of him down the line. Some we got to, some we didn't. We didn't do every version of Black Lightning, but the idea at the time was picking characters that were both heads only and had the opportunity to do new versions. And rounding that out was Amazo, again with his pants up to and past the belly button line, with his Green Lantern ring, which we borrowed the tool from Hal Jordan. And he was, again, head only. He was easy to do. He was going to, with the skin color on top was going to look different in package. And there were other versions of Amazo that we could eventually get to. Although I don't think we actually did do any versions of Amazo. He was one of the few characters, maybe including the Eradicator, that this was the only version we ever did. But at least at the time, the thought was there because the long-term planning was there. Didn't always pay off, but hearts were in the right place. Our collectible minds were in the right place to satisfy everybody. We had to satisfy Walmart and DC and Warner Brothers and Mattel and the collectors. And when you're juggling all of those balls and all of those people who are emotionally connected to the line, you're not always going to win. But we tried. All right, and then Metallo. Metallo was the Build-A-Figure. Same thing. There were lots of different versions of Metallo that we could have chosen and could have even maybe done a different version of him down the line. We didn't, again, but there was a more regular-sized version of Metallo, like from the 60s, that we could have possibly done. But for this one, he was going to be the Build-A-Figure, and the Build-A-Figure was able to be fully tooled. And we wanted to make sure, since the rest of the figures had minimal tooling, that this one really stood out. And I remember in particular there was a problem where the vendor wasn't painting the eyes, so we had to make sure they corrected that to make sure the eyes were there. And that was basically the wave. So you had, 5 guys who were heads only, and a giant robot that was a lot of tooling to kind of balance that out and make it look cool. And, again, the Riddler specifically using the buck of the suit to stand out against the other guys. And we did everything we could to make these cool and please everyone. I mean, heck, we even got in that Superman variant that DC and Warner Brothers really wanted in each wave in the first year. So, pleasing everyone, not always possible, especially for those collectors who might not necessarily live next to a Walmart. But we did everything we could.